Sir, we found a way to eliminate risk entirely from our projects. Lead crystal, custom engineered. Name a project we're bidding.
McChesney Office Complex.
In February, we'll have a crane accident that shuts us down for 8 days.
Coopersmith.
We've got cost overruns in March from a global spike in steel prices. In April, credit markets freeze up. We'll have 2 subcontractors going under.
Was this expensive?
A little.
We're gonna be rich. Did we have insurance on that?
The world is full of risk. Every single day when we step outside our house, who knows what may come. But the fact is that we manage that risk in our own personal lives, but we do it in the business world too. Welcome students, this is chapter number 9, this is Chef Hawks, and we are working on risk management today. So let's jump right into this. So, when we look at the premise, which is generally something like a restaurant, a hotel, we're in our hospitality industry, so we're looking at things that could happen inside and outside of that establishment. We have a liability. A liability is a legal responsibility that we have to make sure that people are safe. These are laws that are enforceable by law, that we can get into some serious trouble, and the business can be in serious trouble if we flout these laws. Failure to provide a safe environment can be very detrimental to our reputation as a business. It can result in heavy fines, and if there are accidents happening, we can have some huge lawsuits that can put the company out of business. So management needs to be focusing on potential hazards that are around. Rather than waiting for an accident to actually happen, we should actually be proactive and looking to see where risks may lie. We need to take steps to correct those hazards and make sure that we have proper warnings in areas where you cannot eliminate all health hazards entirely. So we should have an effective safety program. So this will provide reasonable care in situations where there may be risk. We have to be thoughtful about the precautions that need to be taken in order for people to be safe, whether being employees or customers or anyone who's visiting our place of business. We need to have a written safety program so that it actually runs through and everyone can then can actually see this program and understand it. It's very important to actually have a program where everyone understands it and holds by it. You can't eliminate all risk in everything that we do, but we do have to make sure that we do everything in our power to make it as safe as possible. Our operations safety refers to the premises, to the tools and equipment that we're using, the standards that everything is held to, and the environment that we create. So we have different acts that we have to follow, things like the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA. So this is a federal law. This law in particular was to do with the youth of the country and what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do when they're working. You also have to make sure you check local and state laws just to make sure, because some of them are more stringent and those will supersede if they have more stringent rules for that particular area. So under the Fair Labor Standard Act, the federal law, this means that anyone who is 16 and 17 years of age can work unlimited hours. They have to be careful, though, working in situations declared as hazardous. Hazardous equipment being things like power-driven machines, meat processing machines, meat slicers, meat saws, patty forming machines, meat grinders, and meat choppers, that they're not allowed to use any of these pieces of equipment. They're not allowed to use, feed into, or set up, adjust, repair, or clean any of these machines. If you're 14 and 15 years of age, then you will have significant restrictions on the number of hours you can work. You're not allowed to work anywhere near any open flame cooking, and you're also you're allowed to prepare beverages, and you're allowed to clean surfaces which are less than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You can also filter, transport, and dispose of oil and grease as long as it's below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So the oil that we have in our deep fryer may be at 350 degrees, well above the limitations on what you're allowed to do with it. But if it's turned off and it's allowed to fall below 100, then you can. 14 and 15-year-olds also are not allowed to do the various different things that 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to do. They're not allowed to use anything that's power driven, any of the machines. They're not allowed to use any automatic cookers. They're also not allowed to work in any freezer or meat cooler situations either. Let's talk about OSHA.
OSHA stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration and is an agency of the United States Department of Labor. It is a relatively small agency with a big mission: to assure safe and healthy working conditions by setting and enforcing standards that provide training, outreach, education, and assistance to employees. Basically, OSHA says that employers have the responsibility to provide a safe workspace. By enforcing this through workplace safety inspections, injury rates and costs have reduced, without adverse effects to employment, sales, credit ratings, or firm survival. By law, employers must find and correct safety and health problems. The OSHA Act requires that workers in hazardous environments are properly trained, informed via alarms or color-coded systems, provided PPE at no cost, and are working in safe conditions. Monitoring air quality and switching to safer chemicals effectively reduces risks.
Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This was set up to make sure that the safety of employees and people who are coming into your establishment were held up. And so this is a federal agency, works for the federal government. It's a relatively small agency. However, it does have a significant amount of reach. This enforces the safety and related standards and regulations to do all the way across America to do with any business. Employers must notify their employees of any issues that are happening, any possible dangers that are occurring or that are present within their business. They have to display a current OSHA poster. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. It must be easily visible, and we cannot have a photocopy of that poster or an altered copy of that poster. No business has the right to try and hide anything that OSHA dictates as being significant that has to be upheld to keep everyone safe. This is what the poster looks like from a distance, obviously. But so always be on the lookout for this because it has a lot of information on there. We're going to discuss a little of that, but it helps us to be safe in our environment. OSHA regulations dictate that when accidents occur, certain submissions of forms must happen. An investigation has to happen into that accident and be reported to them as well, whether it's an accident, an injury, or an illness. So we must report any accident that results in the death or hospitalization of 3 or more employees within 8 hours of the occurrence. Remember, these things could possibly be foodborne illness, as well as accidents that can happen in our business. We have to record other employee illnesses and injuries within 6 working days. We have to maintain a year-long log of occupational injuries and illnesses, known as OSHA Form 300. When we have an accident, that's an unplanned or undesirable event, is what it's also known as. But this is where we may have property damage, injuries or fatalities, lost time from work, disruption from work as well. These are referred to as incidents or events for risk purposes. Sometimes there may be a near miss. Property damage or injury may have been avoided, but even though these were avoided, if there is a near miss as to a serious accident happening, we should investigate and report these. This is one way that we can make sure that they don't happen again. Let's take a look at a pretty significant near miss that a famous individual had not too long ago.
Landing mistakenly on a taxiway, not the runway, is now the focus of an FAA investigation, and the video you're about to see will likely be at the heart of it. Overnight, NBC News obtained video of the moment Harrison Ford accidentally flew his single-engine plane over a 737 filled with passengers. It happened 2 weeks ago at John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California. From another angle, you can see Ford's yellow Husky coming dangerously close to an American Airlines flight preparing to take off with 116 people on board. Ford had been cleared to land on a short runway, but instead, as you can see here in the distance, he mistakenly landed on a parallel taxiway where planes taxi before takeoff. Experts say that is a clear FAA violation.
Operating in and out of this airport, it's a small airport. There's a lot of traffic going in and out of it. It's a complex bit of airspace. It requires a lot of concentration.
Once on the ground, Ford radioed air traffic control. Was that airliner meant to be underneath me? The controller told Ford he hadn't landed on the runway. Instead, you landed on taxiway C, to which Ford replied, I landed on C.
Talk about a bad near miss. That could have been tragic. Luckily, he happened to pass over the top and not straight through that airliner. When you're investigating an accident as a manager, we should be recording the information very carefully. Make sure that you include a good description of what occurred, collect physical evidence if there is any, and then interview everyone who's involved. Make sure you determine the sequence of the events, making sure that everything's determined in a correct form, and then submit that report. Keep employees informed as to how the investigation is going, and post any emergency numbers that are needed. So this is our Form 301 that shows all about when you're recording illnesses and injuries that are happening in your place of business. So when you have a communication that's going out, a hazard communication standard that's going out, an HCS, it's also known as a right to know. That's because people have the right to know about occurrences and illnesses that may have happened in your business. Or it's also known as a HAZCOM, a hazard communication. So we must notify all employees of chemical hazards that we have in our business. And we should be training all of our employees as to how to safely use those chemicals too. When we're storing hazardous chemicals, then we can have some physical hazards that can occur. Some of these can cause damage to property, some can cause immediate injury, some chemicals may be flammable or explosive, and some may be very reactive to air or water. We must make sure that we're always storing these effectively and carefully. Some items are stored under pressure, just like our propane for our cylinders, which is actually stored in a hazardous safe to keep those safe. So we have to look at different health hazards that are around to deal with those kinds of chemicals. There may be short or long-term illnesses or injuries that can occur. We have to make sure that we're careful if we have anything that may be toxic or carcinogenic, which is cancer-giving, or something that's irritating to possibly the lungs or skin, or maybe corrosive as well. We should have safety data sheets on all chemicals that we have in our business. What is a safety data sheet? Let's take a look at one. As you walk into our classroom, you'll actually see an SDS sheet book or a folder. And so if you actually look at that, it has all of our safety data sheets for every chemical that we use in our classroom and in our kitchen. So our SDS sheet for our sanitizer is right here. So this specifically will go into who made the actual sanitizer, any information that we can use to contact them if we need it. It also talks about the toxicity and the corrosive nature and the damage to eyes that this can cause as well. It also talks about various hazardous statements and precautionary statements, how we can use it effectively and safely. It goes into the chemical makeup of that particular liquid as well, and what you should do in various different cases, whether it comes in contact with your eyes, skin, if it's swallowed, inhaled, anything along those lines. It also has different reasons for actually using it, where it can be used, and what happens if there's an accidental release of that, how we should store it and handle it. So it really goes into a significant amount of detail on all different things to do with this particular chemical. Like I said, we should have one of these for every chemical that we use in our facility. That should be easily accessible to any emergency services and to any first responders when they come in if there has been an accident. That's why we have ours in a 3-ring binder right next to our front door. Now, where do I find our SDS sheets so that I can actually print them up to keep them in that 3-ring binder? So the chemical manufacturers actually supply them all. It's very easy to find them generally on their website. If you just look up SDS sheets on the website for those particular manufacturers, they normally have them right there. But this is an OSHA requirement to have those, and they must be easily accessible. Our SDS sheets give instructions for safe use and handling, hazards to do with those chemicals, any precautions we have to take, any PPE, personal protective equipment, we must wear for it, first aid information if someone's injured by it, manufacturer's information on the product, and then the preparation date of the SDS sheet, because they sometimes change the chemical makeup or they become more knowledgeable about those particular chemicals. Sometimes those SDS sheets are updated, so we have to keep an eye out for any updates. And then any hazardous ingredients and identity information that we need to have on the particular chemical. So we should have a safety program within our business. So this is based on safety practices of our company and how we operate to keep ourselves safe. It's also quite often a requirement of an insurance carrier to make sure that we are working on doing everything we can to keep our business safe. It should meet the needs of our operation, especially if we have different geographic locations, because different locations in a business may have different requirements to keep everything safe. When we look at doing a safety audit, we must judge the levels of safety that are required, look at the different types of facilities and the makeup of those facilities, look at the equipment that's being used, and what the employee practices should be, and what the management practices should be. This should be able to help us to identify any hazardous areas or practices that are happening in our business and how we can limit them.
The purpose of a general safety audit is to judge the level of safety in the operation. It is an inspection of all the parts of the operation, facilities, equipment, and employee and management practices. A general safety audit identifies any areas or practices that might be hazardous to employees and guests. An inspector will use a checklist to perform the safety audit and will mark any unsafe issues that need to be addressed and repaired. One way to prepare for a safety audit is by performing regular self-inspections. This helps ensure all employees are using correct safety practices throughout the operation. The safety audit covers 4 general areas. The first area is the facility. This includes the exterior and interior of the physical building structure, and also things like the plumbing and electricity. Inspect outside areas like drive-through windows, parking lots, and outdoor eating areas. Inside the building, look at the furnishings. This includes booths, tables, and chairs, as well as fixtures like sinks, lights, and doors. The next area a safety audit covers is equipment. All equipment must meet the legal standards for food service equipment. Check to find the stamp of approval by either the National Sanitation Foundation or Underwriters Laboratories. Things like cooking and cutting equipment, refrigerators, tools, vehicles, fire extinguishers, and alarms all must be maintained in acceptable working condition, which basically means check equipment regularly to make sure nothing can harm or injure an employee during use. If equipment needs repair, the employees who use the equipment must tell the team and their supervisor. If a piece of equipment poses a hazard, then it should be turned off. A certified technician is the only person qualified to repair equipment and determine that it is safe to use again. The next area of the audit is employee practices. This means that managers must train employees in safe practices and then supervise them to make sure employees use these practices on the job. Training includes the proper use of work equipment. Using equipment incorrectly can lead to equipment problems and potential injuries. The last area to inspect is management practices. This is basically how committed management is to protecting employees and guests. It includes identifying potential hazards to employees and guests and providing warnings to prevent injury, like putting out wet floor signs to prevent falls. It also means doing whatever is necessary to make the operation safe, like keeping sidewalks free and clear of ice and snow, even during a blizzard. When violations or accidents occur, it can mean that the safety program needs improvement. Employees should only do the jobs they have been trained for and are physically able to do. Employees should be updated and retrained whenever new pieces of equipment are purchased or major aspects of the operation change. A strong safety program can lower operating costs, increase profitability, and raise the overall quality of the dining experience. Keep a close eye on safety by performing regular self-inspections. Safety is critical to employee and customer satisfaction.
A good management team will always make sure that as they're doing a personal audit on your own business, that you'll have a good checklist to go down, that you'll make sure that this is all being marked down so that it's standardized. This way, whichever manager is going through and double checking on all of these things, that things are not forgotten about. Make sure that as you're going through, that you're making notes on things that need to be improved, and make sure you follow through to make sure they are improved. The safety audit should cover your facilities, the building, inside and out, any of your equipment that you have, the employee practices, and the management practices throughout the organization. So when you look at the facilities, that's the exterior and interior of the building. That includes things like furniture and fixtures, the major systems, the electrical and plumbing that run through the actual building itself. And also with all the equipment, it should be that they hold up to the legal standards that are required of them, that they're in acceptable working condition at all times. Anything that needs to be repaired is always reported, and hazardous machines are turned off, and I would also say unplugged, that way that they cannot be accidentally reused. Make sure that you have a certified technician, as it mentioned in that video, to take care of fixing any of these things, so that you know for sure that they are not just fixed so they turn back on, but so they also operate safely. All our equipment in the kitchen, if you take a look around, either has an NSF or a UL logo on it, and that's because these two organizations are all about safety and durability and easily cleanable nature of all of our equipment. We need to be able to maintain all of our equipment as safely as possible, so always look out for those items on there. When we look at employee practices, we must make sure that all our employees have been trained in the correct use of all of the equipment around. If they have not been trained, they should not be using that equipment. So in order to be able to use new equipment or updated equipment or equipment which has new processes involved with it, they must be employed and they must be trained in there. And then those supervisors must keep an eye out to make sure that it's being done appropriately and no shortcuts are being taken where more injuries and risk is possible. When we look at management processes, management must be committed to safety. It has to be the number one thing that we work on and maintain. We should be all about protecting the employees and guests who come into our establishment. If we have violations and accidents occurring, we have to figure out how to make improvements. We have to figure out how to make things safer. And so that could be making sure that employees are correctly trained for all the jobs and that they're physically capable of actually doing that job. If you have someone who's not physically capable of holding the piece of equipment or moving the piece of equipment in a safe kind of way, then that employee shouldn't be using that. We have to make sure that they are always updated and retrained on any new equipment or any operational changes that occur. The net result of having a strong safety program is you're going to have lower operational costs. You're also going to increase your profitability as well and raise the overall quality of the dining experience you'll be able to offer. Our emergency plans should be there to protect workers, guests, and property. It should help to prevent confusion when issues come up and emergencies happen. It should reduce fear as well in all of your employees and the guests who are possibly coming in because you have a plan. It should minimize any injury and loss if an accident or an emergency occur.
These findings have businesses now wondering if they need an evacuation plan in place. New at 10, Mitch Weber is live at JJ's. And Mitch, this raises questions for all restaurant owners.
Yeah, exactly, Mark. What happened here at JJ's, and now that OSHA fine has many owners wondering if they're not compliant. Well, every year, fire investigators go around to businesses and check things like the fire extinguisher. Some businesses tell me an evacuation plan is not part of it. When choosing where to eat, maybe it's the ambiance, what's on the menu, or even that day's special. But safety is one ingredient Michael Faust makes sure each of his 32 employees know when to use.
You want to make sure that all your guests are taken care of, no matter what the situation.
From their first day on the job, Faust trains every employee at the Farmhouse restaurant to know what to do in case of any emergency. Knowing where the exits are is the first of many steps.
Choking is one of the biggest hazards in a restaurant, so they need to know how to do the Heimlich maneuver, but also with CPR.
Faust isn't only an owner of this River Market restaurant, he's a volunteer firefighter.
So it was really easy for me to set a plan for here of evacuation. What happens if we do smell gas? Who do we call? Where's the numbers that you call?
Numbers he found quickly 2 years ago when he hit a gas line.
Drilled down through the floor instead of up through the floor. We shut all operations down. We evacuated everybody out of the building.
And the tone of how it's handled is also part of the evacuation plan.
I can come in here and say, everybody needs to get out now. Everybody's up and out. Or I can go in and say, we've got a gas leak, and I think that everybody should exit the premises right now.
A plan Faust already has in place that wasn't required.
As part of your emergency plans, you should have your floor plans for your restaurant or your hotel. You should always have evacuation routes, and you should always have the legally mandated exit signs that light up, so that way even in smoke or darkness, people can still find the quickest way out of your establishment. Always having emergency numbers at hand, just in case if you need to call. For the main parts of our emergency plan, we have to be able to install fire safety equipment so that we can tackle anything if it's small, but always be careful, never be tempted to try and handle a significant fire. You need to leave that to the experts. We develop and post evacuation routes so that everyone can be aware of it very quickly without having to study it too much. Keep exits always clear. We're never putting anything up against any of our fire exits, making sure that we have good access to be able to get in and out of our building, and train and drill employees just like we do in school. You'll have to do this all the way through your working career as well, because we have to know how to get in and out as quickly as possible to keep ourselves safe. A positive work environment is really important for all employees and managers in that establishment. We want to have a respectful area that's safe and everyone is treated equally. Managers should create that environment. They should enforce the rules equally across everyone and lead by example as well. The two critical aspects is all about respectfulness and equal treatment. Complaints should be handled appropriately.
There are two critical aspects of a positive work environment: respectfulness and equal treatment for all employees. In a harassment-free environment, complaints are handled appropriately, and a workplace that is respectful of everyone is supported. Harassment happens when slurs or other verbal or physical conduct related to a person's race, gender expression, color, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or disability interferes with the person's work performance or creates an unhealthy work environment. Because harassment covers many categories, it's important to understand what exactly is considered harassment. Making comments or even jokes about a person's race, national origin, or color is unacceptable. Don't use slang words when talking to someone or when describing someone. You also shouldn't discriminate against someone's age, whether young or old. This includes making jokes or hurtful comments. There are many different religions, and it's not acceptable to discriminate against someone for their religious beliefs. It's also considered harassment if you make inappropriate comments, gestures, or even touch a coworker. This is even true if someone is pregnant. Finally, if someone is disabled, you can't make offensive comments or jokes. This is also considered harassment. Everyone has the responsibility to prevent harassment. Preventing discrimination is just as important as responding to it, for the welfare of everyone in the operation and the business itself.
Harassment can include slurs, verbal or physical conduct related to race, gender expression, color, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or disability. So this interferes with the performance of all employees. If employees don't feel that they're in a safe work environment, it's a very unhealthy work environment too that can be created through this. So the categories of harassment are race, color, age, religion, sex, including pregnancy, national origin, disability, or genetic information. The harassment-free policy should include information that provides guidelines and procedures on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. It should have a preventative approach to it, because hopefully if we can stop this from happening before it does, then everyone is in a more comfortable environment to be able to work in. It should be all about treating everyone with mutual respect, and it should help to make a productive and pleasant work environment. The policies should accomplish mutual respect, organizational values, adherence to the policies, the Civil Rights Act, and situations that are covered within this. The policies should cover maintenance of a harassment-free operation. It should also help to deal with harassment situations as well. It should have informal resolutions to everything, and it should have a process for complaints with zero tolerance attached to that. The employees understand from day one when they walk into the establishment that it's not an acceptable situation to create. Managers should always have an open door policy, allowing people to come in and discuss issues that they may have. There should be directives to protect any complainant that comes up, so that we make sure that the environment is there that allows people to complain when a real situation is there. They should be reporting to the appropriate person, and it should be processed appropriately. We should be investigating all complaints involved. We should not be discussing any of these things with other employees as they may be personal issues that are coming up through these. We should communicate with the appropriate parties, document all of those complaints, collect statements from everyone involved, and then have appropriate disciplinary procedures set out that everybody has to follow. The manager is legally liable when these complaints come up. They must acknowledge and respond immediately to these issues, and they have to be proactive in their stance to make sure that they're creating a safe environment that's a comfortable environment for all.
Hey, can we talk to you?
It's important.
We have an issue with a coworker.
It's Kyle. It's Kyle. It's Kyle.
It's Kyle. But just right up front, let me just say, he's a really nice guy. He works hard. He gets his work done very, very well. So this isn't about his job performance.
All we're saying is that we wish we had been told.
It'd have been nice to have been told, yeah.
I forgot Kramer.
Do you need more? Daddy's a Jedi.
And we're not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's what we're saying.
We're not being intolerant.
No.
He's welcome to worship whatever he wants.
Yes.
Whatever.
What do they worship?
I don't know. Trees or something. The point is, we're not being intolerant.
I'm very tolerant. My husband is left-handed.
But lately we've become a bit concerned. Concerned that Kyle might not actually be a Jedi.
I have to take this. Yes, my master. Yes, the plan is proceeding. I'll catch up with you guys. No, they suspect nothing.
We think he might be Sith.
That's the bad one.
It's dusty in here.
Yeah. Feel better.
What is this PC load letter? What does that even mean? I hate this printer!
We're not being judgmental. But we're concerned.
We're scared.
Yeah. Scared. And being that we're not allowed to talk about religion in the workplace, we thought that maybe you, because you're head of HR, could talk to him and make. I guess that about wraps things up. So I need to urinate. I'm going to take care of that now. Offend you? I hope I did not. No, wait, that's the wrong guy.
As you can see, risk management is a very wide subject to cover. So we covered everything from safety to law, all the way through to harassment and dealing with situations and exactly how we bring up complaints. So everything in here is really important. This keeps us safe. It keeps a very positive and enjoyable work environment to be able to be in as well. Whether you're in school or through into your careers, these are all very important things. If there's anything you didn't understand, let's talk. But apart from that, I will see you in the kitchen. Cheers.